Today is Wednesday, October 16th, 2019. My name is Edna Sussman. I'm a reference librarian at the Half Hollow Hills Community Library in Dix Hills, New York. We're at the Long Island State Veterans Home in Stony Brook, New York, interviewing Robert H. Meyer, a World War II Air Force veteran, as part of our Veterans Testimonial Project and in collaboration with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Thank you so much, Bob, for your service and for participating in our project today.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I feel honored.
Thank you. It's our honor, actually. Bob, where and when were you born?
I was born in the lower portion of Manhattan of immigrant parents in 1921.
And what were your parents' names? Who were they? What did they do?
My father was Henry Meyer. My mother was Emma Meyer, and they purchased a delicatessen grocery store in Jackson Heights, where we were raised, and we worked in the store.
You did?
Stocking shelves and delivering orders, and
nice.
We kept active there, and my father had trouble surviving because he had a small business, and during the war, they boycotted the store.
Why?
Because he was German.
Oh.
Even though my brother and I were both in the service, my brother was active in the Tank Corps, and I was active in the 8th Air Force.
He was in it, your brother, at the same time as you?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Now, your parents were both born in Germany, or?
They, my mother was born in Venezuela because her father was a Bible salesman, and he traveled throughout South America, and she was born in Venezuela.
Oh, I see.
My father was born in Germany.
What was her name?
Emma.
Emma, and he was, your father's name again was?
Henry.
Henry. How did they ever meet up?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I think that they met. He was working in a store, and she went into the store.
In New York?
In New York, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who were your siblings? What were their names?
I had an older brother, Henry, and a younger brother, Bernhard.
And so one of them, which one served in the military, or did they both?
My older brother served in the military, and my younger brother, he tried all 4 services, but he had a medical problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so your older brother was in which branch of the service?
He was in the Tank Corps.
Army.
The Army Tank Corps.
Army.
And because he could speak German, he was kept overseas after the war when we occupied Germany. And he stayed over there for 2 years.
Really? To help out? Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know German?
Oh, I could speak German, yeah,
Really?
a little, you know. I understood it, and I could speak a little of it.
So what were you doing before you entered the service?
I worked for a service company, a company that supplied meat cutting equipment to supermarkets and meat markets.
Okay.
And they had 40 men on the road, and I worked in the office managing the men that worked outside.
Wow. This was in New York? In New York City?
All of New York. New York, Canada, and Puerto Rico.
But you lived in New York. You lived in New York City.
When I lived in New York?
No, I mean when you were working for this company, your base was.
No, I was married, and we lived in. My wife and I lived in Glendale.
Ah, okay. So, you served in the Air Force?
In the Air Force,
Air
yeah.
Force.
8th Air Force.
And did you enlist, or were you drafted?
I enlisted because I wanted to be in the Air Force. So in order to get into that branch of service, I figured that I would be better off enlisting. So
to be sure.
I enlisted, yeah.
Yeah, to be sure you got in.
Yeah.
So why did you want the Air Force, actually?
Why did I want the Air Force? I just like to fly, and to I wanted to be a navigator, so I was a navigator on a B-17, a 4-engine bomber.
Wow.
and we flew out of England.
Attention, be advised, there's a false alarm at this time. Attention, be advised, there's a false alarm at this time.
So you enlisted in, was it 1943 you started?
41.
41. And what happened to you when you departed for training camp, when you enlisted? What happened in 41? Once you enlisted, where did you go for training camp?
Well, let's see, I started out in Oregon, and Texas, Oregon.
Texas was the basic training?
Basic training, yeah. And then I went up to Oregon, and we assembled up there as a crew, and we picked up a plane up there at the Boeing factory, and we flew it overseas.
So first, the basic training, what was that like? How was it adjusting to military life for you?
Well, the basic training, we flew like practice missions. We flew in combat, we flew in formation, and...
How did you know to fly? Or they taught you that?
Well, I didn't fly myself. I flew in a plane.
Oh, I see.
In the front portion of the plane of the B-17.
And what exactly was your job?
I was a navigator.
And what does that do, a navigator?
Well, you tell the pilot where to go, and you direct the plane, so to speak, in giving the pilot directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you learned that in basic training, or after basic was?
After basic training. Basic training was strictly military and flying a little here and there. And then in the training itself, we flew separate missions, so to speak.
Was this in Oregon then? In Oregon when you were doing?
In Oregon,
more
and
training?
then Texas. First in Texas, and then up to Oregon, and we picked our plane up in Oregon at the Boeing aircraft factory.
So you wanted to be a navigator, and they...
I always wanted to be a navigator, yeah.
So did you say that, or they gave you options of what job you would have?
Well, they asked, what did you want to do, and I told them I wanted to be a navigator, and they made me a navigator.
Nice.
Good. So it worked out well.
Worked out.
We had a nice good crew of 9 men.
9 men. So once you were, how long were you in Oregon with this additional training?
I would say about a month.
About a month.
Yeah.
Do you remember your instructors during basic and with the specialized training? What were they like?
What kind?
Your instructors.
Do I remember them?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
How was it adapting to the food and the barracks and the military life?
Well, the food was very good, and
Yeah?
it was a good life, so to speak, and we had some activity, and we got together as a crew up there, and we assembled with the 9 men, and the 9 men who flew together got to know one another.
You did? Nice.
They spent a lot of time, and it was up in the air, and
Sure.
very important that they get along well.
Yep. So after this training in Oregon, then where did you go?
Well, we've picked our plane up there in Oregon, and we flew overseas. We flew first to Chicago, then up to Newfoundland to Iceland, Iceland down to Northern Ireland, and then Northern Ireland over to England, where we had our base, our so-called military base, the Air Force base.
Was that all in one trip? All those steps?
No.
Oh.
It took like a month.
Oh, so what did you do at those stops when you?
Well, you would just await the orders. That's all. We would stay 5 days maybe in one area until we had the instructions to continue flying.
You stayed on the base there, wherever you were?
We stood on the base.
On the base.
Went into town and did the various things on the base.
So once your final destination at that point was England?
England, yeah.
And what happened when you got there? What did you have to do?
Well, we lived in the barracks, and we stayed in the barracks, and then we flew 26 missions out of the airport, bombing missions.
So, wow. You were there, how long were you in England?
8 months.
And so, where did you fly these missions?
Over Europe.
Over Europe?
Over Germany and Poland and Norway, France.
Wow. Was it, they were bombing missions?
These are bombing missions. Yeah.
So your plane had a lot of bombs on it?
Oh, yeah.
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 Tell me more about those trips, and did you know where you were going to be going when they?
Oh yeah, every morning when if we were assigned to a bombing mission, we would go down to the assembly hall, and they would tell us where what the bombing mission was for the day, and we flew 1,000 ships, 1,000 planes.
Wow.
Fighters and bombers, and.
Did you go as a single aircraft, or were there others with you?
No, we flew with another. We flew in groups of 20.
Wow.
And then there would be 20, 20, and 20. Be 60 ships, all.
Aircraft.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bombers, and then there would be fighters that would be all around them. There'd be fighters protecting the bombers.
Oh, I see.
So to speak, and.
You mean in case, God forbid, you got fired upon, they would protect you?
Well, of course, the Germans sent up fighter planes to attack us, and
They did?
Oh yeah.
Did your plane ever get hit?
Well, we had one mission. We had 21 holes in our ship.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Was anyone injured? Did people get injured in your plane?
Well, they did get injured, but nobody was injured on our plane.
I see.
But it was a dangerous thing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was considered, an easy thing to do.
No. Wow. You kind of probably knew that when you were going in, right? If you wanted to be a navigator?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I always wanted to be a navigator, so as I say, I enlisted in the Air Force to be sure that I went in the Air Force, and then it was the Army Air Force.
Oh right, Army Air Corps.
Army Air Corps, Army, and it was attached to the Army, but today it's a separate branch of the service,
Right. When you were in it the whole time, it was considered the Army Air Corps?
Yeah.
So how did you feel when each time, was it every day practically you were sent out on these missions?
Well, I flew, as I say, 26 missions, and this was over a period of 8 months.
Code green, all clear. Code green, all clear. Code green, all clear.
And if you weren't flying on a mission, you had other assignments.
Oh.
One was to fly weather, what they called weather. And that would mean that you would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, fly 600 miles west of England, radio the weather in at that point, because that would be the weather that they would take off in on the bombing mission.
Oh, I see. And there are no satellites at that time, probably, right?
No. And then another assignment was to fly spare, what they called spare, SPARE. That would mean 3 ships would follow the group of 20 or 60 ships, and in case any one of them dropped out because of problems, engine problems or whatever, one of those 3 ships would move into that group
spot
to fill in the spot, Yeah.
So you sometimes were on those.
Yes, we flew that several times, and.
How long was, like when you went on a bombing mission, let's say, how long were you in the process of
anywhere from 6 to 10 hours.
Wow, really? So So, did you fly mainly over one country at that time for each
Well,
mission?
Mostly Germany, and we went to Poland, we went to Norway, we went to France.
But Norway, you were dropping bombs in each of these countries?
Yeah, they had submarine pens there.
German submarine pens.
Germany had the submarine pen right in Norway, and right on the edge of Norway, and we went and bombed those areas there.
Wow.
Then we bombed Berlin, we bombed Bremen, and well, I survived.
Thank goodness. Must have been kind of frightening to be up there.
Well, it was, and the one time where I had a real problem was when we assembled for flying. We had what we call a flight bag. It was a big canvas bag that had all of our equipment in it, and someone took my electric extension cord from the bag that I had, and when I went up in the plane, I wasn't able to, and we wore what they called electric underwear.
What's that?
It was like winter underwear that had wires running through it, and you had electric gloves that attached to the outlet on the electric suit, and you plug that into the outlet on the plane.
Is that to keep warm?
Just to keep warm.
Oh, did it work?
Because because we didn't have heat up there, in the plane.
Wow.
So we had to have some kind of heat. Of course, it got to be like 20 degrees below zero.
Oh.
Centigrade.
Wow.
Very cold, very cold.
Really?
Because if, on one occasion, I remember the bombardier, he had to do something to the bomb site, and he had to take off his glove, and when he took off his gloves and touched the metal, his skin came off.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was that cold in the plane?
That cold, very, very
Amazing.
cold. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So you didn't have your connection, your extension cord?
No one, I didn't have it on that mission.
So what
They
did
say,
you do?
Well, I flew without it, and they put me in a hospital for 10 days.
Because of that? Because of the cold?
The flight surgeon said 1 more hour and they would have had to amputate my toes.
Oh my gosh.
And they still bother me today. I should have put in for a pension, but I didn't. It doesn't impede me from walking or anything.
Wow. That must have been really, really painful.
Oh yeah. Well, it was painful at the time, but
Yeah.
today I live with it.
Okay.
And we used to go to Florida, so
Warmer.
it was never a problem.
So it's just amazing how many missions you flew.
26, yeah.
Wow. Did you witness any of the destruction from the bombing? Could you see it from the plane?
Well, no, because we always, when we flew, we would drop our bombs and we would be beyond the target area, and we never saw what happened, Although they used to take pictures of it, and then they would, after, there would be planes following us, and they would take pictures.
Oh, to document it.
And then to document it, and we would see those, and
Yeah.
it was interesting.
It's tough. Hard though.
And tough, yeah.
Sometimes some of the planes in your formation, were they lost? They were shot down?
As I say, I was on 5 missions where we lost 60 planes.
Wow.
Yeah. And
did you know any of the servicemen on those planes?
oh yeah.
You did?
Yeah, well,
That must have been hard.
I still, remember talking to these friends of mine, and we spoke in the morning, and I never saw them again. Their plane got shut down.
Wow. It's hard.
And we still correspond with the parents of.
Do you really? That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Nice.
For years we corresponded with them.
Very nice. Yeah. What kind of friendships and camaraderie did you form while you were in?
Well, we kept in touch over the years. They used to have, what they call them?
Chain letters.
Reunions.
Oh, reunions. Okay.
Reunions, and
Nice.
they had them in Philadelphia and Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and I would go to them.
Oh, that's
and,
nice.
It would be like 5 days, and you'd have breakfasts and then ceremonies and meetings and all, and
Nice.
it was very nice.
So you saw some of your old Air Force buddies there. You saw some of your old Air Force
Yeah, we
buddies.
kept in touch, and
Yeah.
but they're all gone now.
So when you were actually in, what sort of friendships did you form while you were in the service?
Well, just friendships with the people that I was flying with.
Yeah. Yeah. So what more can you tell us about after your 8 months in England, based in England? Then where did they send you?
Well, I came back and I was in Texas, and I became an instructor
Oh,
in navigation, and I was instructing
Nice.
a group of servicemen on navigation.
nice.
Yeah.
Now, when you said you always wanted to be a navigator, but you didn't know, had you flown before you joined?
No.
How did you know what that would be like?
Well, I just read about it, and
Okay.
I just wanted to be one, and it was interesting in that I became what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you when you went in?
21.
So you had to learn that's a whole different language, navigation, right? And learning different equipment.
Oh yeah.
How long
It
was the training for that?
I'd say about 6 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So after while you were in England the whole time, basically stationed.
Yeah.
After you would fly a mission, you then returned to England to.
We go back to England to our base,
To your base.
and live on our base, and
Did you feel safe over there? Were there bombings near where you were stationed?
with the bombing.
Yeah. Did you feel you were safe in England?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was safe in England. You were young then, so you accepted what was there, and you handled it well. I had no trouble adapting to what I was living in.
So once you then left Europe, then you went to Texas? Was that for the remainder of your service?
But yeah.
And you were an
I was
instructor?
an instructor. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. When you were in Europe, how did you stay in touch with family and friends?
Well, just by writing.
You wrote letters and they
Yeah,
sent you
yeah,
letters?
yeah.
Were you able to do anything off duty for recreation when you were there? Or did you stay basically on the base?
Just
Or?
on the base, and we went into town. We were like 5 miles from the town, and
What time were you in?
Grafton, Underwood.
Oh, is it
It was-
near London?
No, it was in the middle of England.
Uh-huh, okay.
It was about, I would say, 50 to 60 miles north of London.
Okay, it was an American air base.
American Air Base, yeah.
So, did you visit any other countries while you were there? Did you travel?
Well, the war was on, so
Right, so there was no
Germany
opportunity.
occupied all of Europe. They
Yeah.
controlled France. They occupied Sweden, or they controlled Sweden, and they occupied Norway partially, and they also occupied Poland.
Right,
And then there was Italy. Italy was part of the
the German.
German group.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and France they overtook too.
Yeah, Germany had the submarines and all. They can control pretty much of the Atlantic with their submarines.
Right. Were you ever? At that age, I guess you're not as afraid as.
No, it never bothered me.
No.
Never, you know, I was never afraid to any extent, and
Really?
we took everything as it came and did what we were told to do. And
Must have been hard when you lost some of your buddies or their planes
yeah,
were shot
well.
down. How do you recover from that?
well, you just accepted it for what it was, and that was life at that time.
Yeah. Wow. And your brother was safe. He came back.
My brother was in the tank corps,
Yeah.
and he came over at D-Day, you know, when we invaded Europe and all, and because he could speak German, he was part of the occupation forces. So he was over there 2 years after the war. Of course, we occupied Germany, and after the war, and we kept our troops there. So he stayed there, as I say, for 2 years after the war.
Did you ever see him while you were serving over there? Did you?
I saw him once,
You did.
and he brought 5 of his friends to my base, and we went up in a plane,
Oh, nice.
and we went over to where his base was, and we buzzed his base.
Where
with
was
the
his
plane.
base? Where was he stationed?
In the middle of England.
Okay. Also.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was, you know, it was quite a life.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
But you know, you're young and you handle it, and you know, it's. I think it would be far more meaningful to me today, you know, if we went through the same experience.
Why do you think? Because you're older and wiser.
Well, because
Yeah.
it's a lot different. I
Yeah.
realize what can happen now. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing that they would send both 2 sons from your family abroad to Europe. I guess.
Well, our third brother, we had. Our family had 3. My mother had 3 sons,
Right.
and the third son had medical problems.
Right.
And he was never able to get in the service. He tried all 4 services, and they rejected him because of his health problems.
I didn't realize they would take 2 from the same family and send you both abroad.
Well,
They did that with others also.
In those days, it was accepted.
Wow. So, how long did you still serve then in Texas? Much longer? Until when?
A good length of time.
Were you in the service when the war ended?
Yes, yeah.
Where were you when the war ended?
I think I was down in New Orleans. I was an instructor, and let's see, where was I now?
But you weren't in Europe. The rest of your service was in the United States.
Yeah,
Once you
yeah.
came back, you stayed in the United States.
United States.
As an
right.
instructor.
As an instructor, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what it was like once you heard the war was over?
Well, just wanted to come home.
You did. How much longer did you have to stay in then?
Well, I guess it was about 4 months or so. you know.
Okay. So you got out in 45?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how did you return home? Well, you were in New Orleans then, or you said Texas?
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah.
So how did you return home? How did they send you home?
Well, came home by train.
Train.
Yeah.
How long did that take? How long a ride was that?
Well, I don't know. A day. It was slow in those days. It wasn't like it is today.
No. So how were you received, Bob, by your family and friends once you got home?
Well, they were very happy to see me, and I got to know this girl where I worked. I used to go back to see a friend of mine at the place where I worked, and I met my wife there.
In New York?
In New York, yeah.
Okay. Huh.
And we started dating, and then we got married, and in
What year did you get married?
1948.
Okay.
So 70 years later, so we're still
Nice.
married.
Oh, congratulations. That's terrific. Wow.
Yeah, she's a wonderful girl, wonderful woman.
Wonderful. How-
We have 2 sons, and they're both proud of them.
Nice.
One is a doctor and a clinical psychologist,
Nice.
and the other works for the federal government out in Kansas.
Oh, so one lives here on the island?
One lives on the island right nearby, and the other lives out in Kansas.
Wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How was it readjusting to civilian life? When you got out of the service, how was it readjusting?
Well, as they say, I went back to work for the company that I'd worked for, and I continued working for them. I worked for them for 40 years.
40 years. Wow.
Yeah. And then when I retired, I continued working for them because they had a company newspaper, and I was editor of the company newspaper.
Oh, nice.
So I made $5,000 a year doing that.
Nice.
And it kept me in touch with all the people I had
Sure.
worked with, you know, so it was really
So-
very pleasant
Yeah.
type of job.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, are you a member of any veterans organizations?
No,
No?
no.
You said
I used to go to the reunions that they had.
you did. You kept.
Yeah.
So you kind of kept in touch for a little bit.
And yeah, well, they would have them in Atlantic City, so my wife and I would go down there and,
Nice.
you know, would stay 3 or 4 or 5 days, and it was very pleasant.
Very nice.
Yeah. They don't have them anymore.
They don't.
No.
How do you feel your wartime experiences affected your life?
Well, I don't think there was much effect. I mean, in that I just accepted what I had done and accepted what I was going into, and that was it.
You did your job.
Yeah, yeah. As I say, I worked for the company that I got started with, and I kept on working for them
Until you retired?
until I retired. And then when I retired, I continued working for their newspaper.
Newspaper, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were awarded a few different medals and
A
awards.
Distinguished Flying Cross.
What was that for?
It was for completing 26 missions.
Wow.
And then the Air Medal, I got 4 Air Medals.
Now, why was that?
That was for each 5 missions that I completed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the European Combat Medal.
For being in the middle of combat.
Well, for being in the European
Theater.
Theater of Operations.
Wow. What are some life lessons you learned from your military service?
What is the what?
Some life lessons you've learned from your military service.
Well, I guess the biggest one was that you accept life for what it is and you march on.
How do you feel your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, I don't feel that war is something that benefits anybody. Everybody loses in a war. Nobody wins a war, so to speak. And fortunately today, and I wish the UN would be a little more assertive, but they should stop any type of war that exists in the world today, because of the atomic bomb is
Scary.
disastrous, you know.
Yep, yep. What message would you like to leave for future generations that might view this interview? What message would you like to leave for future generations that might hear this interview?
Well, we have to respect our country, appreciate that we live in the greatest country in the world, and do whatever we can to make the country greater, and be interested in what goes on in the government so that we know what's what's in our future, and appreciate that fact.
That's good advice. Something I didn't ask you, when you were in Europe, were you ever injured? Did you ever get injured?
I got frostbitten feet once.
Right.
We had, they called it electric underwear.
Oh, right, you told us, yeah.
Which is like underwear with wires running through it, with electric gloves and electric boots. And someone took my extension cord that I used to connect to the outlet on the plane, and I had to I flew the mission without heat. And when I got back from the mission, my feet pained me terribly, and they put me in a hospital for 10 days.
10 days it took.
Well, they almost had to amputate my toes, but they still bother me today.
Really?
But and I never put in for a pension because it didn't impede me from walking. But I'm still bothered by the fact that my feet are very sensitive to cold.
And after you got out of the hospital then in England, you went right back to work, flying missions?
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything you did that you regretted or were?
No, as I say, nobody wins a war. I'm glad that I was able to serve, and the fact that I survived 26 missions means that
Amazing.
I was very fortunate.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, quite welcome.
Anything that you feel we haven't discussed or that you'd like to add?
No, other than we live in the greatest country in the world.
You're right. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for your service. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.